I'm excited to have it back. And, you know, there's a lot of people, we were just talking about this, that it's their job to represent their organization, to go out in front of the public, to sell the story, to teach, to bring awareness to the dryland forest. And then there are like the boots on the ground people that are doing the work in the background. And we all know that needs to get done and that it's probably happening out there, but we don't hear from those people very much. So I think that was sort of the inspiration for the theme of this year's biocultural series. And we really wanted to start out with these guys who are here with us tonight because they've been on the land for a long time and they've seen a lot and done a lot and have a really unique perspective that maybe we don't hear that much in the community. So I'm excited to have them here. Thanks, guys. Okay. None of them want to do this. You know, Waikoloa, we are really known for our wili wili trees. That's something we celebrate and talk about. It's an iconic species in our landscape, and it's part of the main reason that Waikoloa Dry Forest Initiative exists. But there's this other really important native species here in the Dryland Forest Preserve called uhi uhi. And uhi uhi is critically endangered. There just really aren't very many of them left. There's probably somewhere around 50 wild individuals left. And just like wili wili, they're a legume. They're a family of plants that can do something kind of amazing. They can fix nitrogen from the air. So they can tap into one of the most important nutrients because they host rhizobia bacteria that helps the plant access that nitrogen. And in return, the plants, the uhi uhi in this case, feeds the bacteria. So it's a perfect symbiosis. It's an example of reciprocity where the bacteria and the tree actually do better than they could on their own because they work together. So that's a perfect example of that symbiosis. Uhi uhi trees are, like I said, they're really rare. And before Waikoloa Dry Forest Initiative was started, it wasn't really known that they were in this region. So those early surveys, they found that there's actually 10 of them here. And if you remember, I said there's about 50. So there's 10 of these uhi uhi trees, and that sort of led to like people taking this a little bit more seriously. Like, oh, Waikoloa is a habitat for like a really rare species. That's pretty cool. And so Bev guys, then they found another one and another one and another one. And by the time we were formed, it was found that there are 13 mature, old kupuna uhi uhi trees here, so hundreds of years old. And in those 13 being in such proximity, it kind of made this place perhaps the densest population of uhi uhi left, which nobody really expected for Waikoloa. So when we first started doing the restoration work here, we thought, let's start where the wili wili and the uhi uhi are. Like those areas are important. Let's take care of those trees as best we can. And then we'll fill in all the gaps around there later, hoping that maybe these trees would provide some of that microbiota or you know, a little bit of shade, or maybe they just knew something better about that site. Maybe they could help guide us in this restoration effort. And uhi uhi is actually one of the reasons that the hui kind of formed together, because I found out that the rest of the uhi uhi were being managed at Kaupalehu with wilds and La'iopua with Keala. And the rest of them are at Puwawa, which our friend Elliot was working at the time. And that's pretty much all of them. And in some of our early work days, you know, it occurred to us that if something went wrong with these trees, like we were the people to have to answer for it. Yeah, kind of a big responsibility, right? I mean, the idea that there are entire species that their survival kind of sits on the shoulders of so few people is kind of nuts. So it was really easy for us to think, hey, maybe we should work together and share and teach each other. And the Dry Forest Hui was really formed, you know, when all of us really found ourselves newly in charge of these spaces and the communities that went along with them. So it was important that we worked together. So we call it the dry forest hui o Hana, and like I said, for us, it was really, you know, an obvious thing to do. But it turns out that like not very many people do this, that work across agencies and share everything so freely. So we did actually kind of break down a few norms too, and people have definitely looked at us as a model for other collaborations. So in addition to Waikoloa Dry Forest and Kaupalehu and Puwawa, we expanded and included Mauna Kea Forest Restoration Project. Some of you have probably been up there to plant trees. And then 2 Makai sites. So the Nature Conservancy has a marine program at Kiholo, and Hui Aloha Kiholo is also sort of in the hui just by proximity. And then the national park down at Kaloko Honokohau. So all these sites have dryland forest remnants and teams of people that are working to try to restore that dryland forest. You know, we get together once a month and pool our energy and our weed whackers and our ideas, and it's really fun. You know, I think that we all started this because we needed to. We didn't have much to work with, but we also really became friends. But I think that the hui has lasted because each one of us has gained more from this collaboration than we've put in. Each site has become more successful because of this working together. And it's that reciprocity that I think keeps it going, that keeps managers saying, yeah, you can go work at that site for the day, or sure, we'll go down to Kaloko Honokohau for a week or for a Friday or whatever. And it's been a really cool collaboration to be a part of. And these are some of my favorite people. So I'm really happy to have you guys here. And they're gonna talk all about their work. But just to introduce them, first, we have Kei Kaulike Tomich, who's are you the site manager? At Kaupalehu Dryland Forest. He was born and raised in Kona, and he lives in Kaupalehu and is fortunate to work in his home Ahupua'a, where he's been working for the past 10 years. And Malama Aina and activism and sharing is just kind of part of the fabric of his family as far as I've ever known. And he is a leader that doesn't have to say very much. So I'm really excited for him to be on this panel. And then we have Wilds. Wilds is famous in our industry because he just has this like infectious personality and positivity, and we love Wilds, but he's a former manager at Kaupalehu. So Wilds was born on Oahu and raised on Hawaii Island, and he was the site manager there for 15 years, and now he works as the native plant specialist at the John Paul Mitchell Systems Avapui Farm in Pauwilo. He hopes to always cultivate excitement and connection to Hawaii's cultural and natural resources, and we just miss him a lot. And so we were like, can you please come and talk to everybody today? So I'm really excited to have you. Next we have Rob Yagi. So Rob is our preserve manager here at Waikoloa Dry Forest. He joined the hui in 2016 as our preserve manager after many years and many miles of walking, searching for some of the rarest trees on the island. Rob's alter ego is Brother Nature. Brother Nature embraces his positivity and love of community and has inspired a generation of local youth to be stoked about dryland forests. And I just learned this other thing, that they also call him the GOAT. And he said, not because he's the greatest of all time, which is not true because he is, but because of the way he can walk across this and spending this many years on this lava flow is something in itself. All right, and then last we have Kealakai Kanaki. He is what is your title?
Napu'u specialist.
The Napu'u specialist at Napu'u Natural Resource Management. That's Puawa and Pu'anahulu. He is my husband. He was born and raised in East Hawaii. Well, I was going to read what he wrote, but I thought I should lead with that. He was later drawn to live in West Hawaii on his family's Hawaiian home lease in Kauai High, and also to work in conservation, which he's been doing for the past 15 years. In his field of work, he especially enjoys being told that accomplishing project goals is impossible, being underfunded and understaffed, and constantly needing to shift focus as land management needs change. Thank you guys so much for being here. I have a list of questions I'm going to go through, have them do some introductions. But if you guys have questions for them as they're speaking, it would be fun and a little bit more comfortable for everybody, I think, if you just kind of popped them in there as we're talking about each site. So yeah, so I think we'll just start with introductions. So who wants to go first?
Oh.
Aloha. Again, Kialaka Ikanaki, Napu Natural Resource Management Specialist. So Napu references to both pu'us, Pu'uawa and Pu'anahulu. So that is state land. There's different designations of the land there. There's the Forest Bird Sanctuary. There's a forest reserve that's in Pu'uawa, and then in Pu'anahulu, it's a game management area. So each of these designations kind of have different land uses and also different rules. So our project, we are not the state in a sense. We apply for funding for the state to do management on their lands. So there's, and the way that we do that is we use PCSU as our actual employer, which is a Pacific Corporation, forgetting the rest, but basically like this research group, and this is kind of how it started, is research funding, and then it kind of transitioned over into land management. And then we use RCUH, which is the Research Corporation, University of Hawaii, and they're kind of like our HR. So what we do is we primarily focus on endangered species management. We have over 16 endangered species there. Most of our focuses are on the plants, and we're trying to basically capture remnant forests where these species live and mitigate the major threats to these species, being wildfire, ungulates, and invasive species. So to do that work, it's pretty simple. Fencing, excluding the animals, fuel break maintenance, or fuel break creation and maintenance, to have something to kind of fight off of for the suppression. And also they do work to actually stop fires. And then last, the invasive species, which there's a huge slew of. The biggest one, as we were probably familiar with in West Hawaii here, is the fountain grass. And then native seed collection, outplanting, and kind of so on. I'm going to pass it on from here.
What's your annual rainfall?
Annual rainfall. So we are on Hualalai. A little above 6,000 feet. We butt up against Kaupalehu, which is the summit there, and it goes all the way down to Kiholo. So you can kind of imagine it's a big difference of gradient. We average between 15 to 30 inches a year.
All right. Thank you, Kella. And I'm Rob Yagi, Waikalua Dry Forest Initiative, and I'm the preserve manager. Our rainfall here is the bottom edge of what's even considered a dry forest. And as we look around, you can tell that things are starting to get crispy out there. So I'm always worried about the rainfall, but we get 9 to 12 inches of rain per year. And as many people know, this area is a 275-acre forest preserve, mainly put in by the community to protect this population of wili wili, and as Jen mentioned, this population of uhi uhi that was still found to be persisting out here. So I came on board in 2016 as the preserve manager, which means I get to do all of the fun activities out in the field, and I couldn't be happier about it. But what you're seeing all around us is the culmination of years of hard work through the hui, and prior to the fence being completed in 2012 or so, everything looked like what you see on the horizons as you look out from this space. All fountain grass, handful of these large trees that were still persisting out here. And since that time, we've been slowly moving the grass back, removing it, planting native species back into the area. We have approximately 60 native plant species that we work with here in Waikoloa, which is up from the 8 to 10 that were known to be out here when we first began. And yeah, slowly working our way towards the dream, fully functioning forest out here.
That was awesome, Rob. Aloha mai kako. My name is Wild Pihanui Ilaitia Bronner. I am the former site manager at Ko'oplehu Dryland Forest. I'm really honored to be here. I learned a lot through working in conservation in the last 15 years that will last a lifetime. It's so impressive to see what's going on here, to revisit Waikoloa in specific, but I'm really honored to be a part of this collective of Hamas, these conservation awesome bradas. But I currently live on the Hamakua coast, so it's not too dry. I don't know what our annual rainfall is, but it's way more than you guys.
150.
Just like in the last 40 days, I mean, within a period of 15 days, we got over 21 inches of rain. Just some relativity there. But I learned a lot from my coworkers and my colleagues, and mahalo for having me here. It's always nice to be in this space, honoring place. Mahalo.
Aloha, I'm Keikaulike Tomich. I'm the current manager at the Ko'oplehu Dry Forest. When we look to Hualalai, you can kind of see the ridge line, and that's more or less where Ko'oplehu is. I work in a 70-acre llama preserve, and we get between 5 and 35 inches of rain a year. And I more or less do what Rob and Kiala do.
Well said.
Well said. I wanted to address the fact that our whole panel is male and ask you, anybody, you can pop in. I know that that's not representative of our industry, which is awesome because that wasn't always true in conservation. So I just wanted to see if there are any wahine you would like to bring into the group today or talk about, or other kupuna that have guided your work at your respective sites.
I would say that yes, this panel does not at all represent what is in the industry. So at Napu, there's currently a total of 10 of us. 3 are Kane and 7 are Wahine. The manager is Edith Atkins, who had worked on the project prior to me joining. She wrote one of the plans, the initial plans, and she's our current leader. Another is our education and outreach specialist, Alicia, and she is also Wahine and a leader in that field. And then our botanical team is Rico Libby, and she comes from doing work at Ko'oplehu, but is leading our botanical program. And then last, for leaders, we have Giselle Geronimo, and she leads our vegetation control and data management program. So certainly a lot of Wahine leaders, Wahine workers on the ground next to us Kanes.
All right. Yeah. I've just been, I guess, blessed in a way to work on some really amazing teams through conservation over the years. And just starting right here in Waikoloa Dry Forest, Jen is our leader and one of my closest friends and mentors. And just being on this panel with Jen and Keala, who basically trained me from the time I got into conservation. And yeah, it's just great to be a part of a team with really sharp minds, and of course, Auntie Bev as the visionary for this whole project, leading the way. And it's awesome to to get to meet different people and get all of these different perspectives, even back from when I worked up at Biocultural training area, and the person that got me kind of really into looking at plants very closely, Kathy Kawakami, really took her time to show me what could be done with plants. She was the outplanting and nursery specialist. She taught me a lot up there. And yeah, just so much inspiration. And then going back further from that, all of my kumu at the University of Hawaii at Hilo, my Kalani Glendon Backlig, my Olelo Hawaii kumu, I went through her course and I was terrified the entire time because we only spoke Olelo Hawaii and I was very new. But through, all of that is just all of these little lessons that build up and build up and build up into what we have today. And so super grateful to all of the women who have taught me, and to go back to the very beginning to my mom who, who taught me that to always be positive and to have a great outlook on life. And thank you, Mom. Love you.
Oh, that's so great. When I worked at Ko'oplehu a little bit before Kekolike and with Kekolike, so you have to excuse me because a lot of what I'm going to reference to is with Like. But so many mana wahine that helped me out. Like the first time I ever was here, Auntie Bev, was 2008. Dave Fawcett is like his gold locks flowing in the heavy Waikoloa wind, weed whacking, and none of the fence was here, and like it's just so impressive to see what's going on. But Bev paving the way, like really for me at Ko'oplehu, Auntie Yvonne Yarber Carter is a huge grounding force, and still continues to be. On so many levels, teaching us about ecological things, spiritual things, artistic, how we can stoke people out and get them excited, and passionate about things, which in turn, you want to fight for those things when you love them. Yeah. Auntie Ku'ule Keakelani, I call her Auntie Ku'ule because that's how I was introduced to her, even though she's not that much older than me.
Yeah.
Respect. The generational things, it's a very big thing in Hawaii. My mom too. She was a single mom, raised me really solid and put me through a awesome school. So bless her heart. But and then Jen Lawson, like wow, so like colleague. I really look up to you, and all because all of our organizations are different, and we hustle support in different ways. And so I really admire you. I didn't admire. I admire you guys. There's over the years we've had a lot of great interns. We used to manage a lot of interns, and we always joke about them, and then they joke on us because we was the bosses, but. Some of our Wahine interns could outwork the guys. Like they were way more independent. They had a really good work ethic. And then we would go to these conferences and be like, wow, you guys look so much different than you do in the field. They're like absolute hamas in the field. And then we're all in this very, very different setting. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. All these people are so passionate about what they do and like just absolutely kick butt in the field. But much aloha to all of those awesome ladies, and continue to kick butt. Everybody. Mahalo.
Perfect.
There's a lot of women in conservation, like majority of Puawa, Waikoloa, and Kopula who are staffed and led by women. Not also like Wilds mentioned pretty much everybody I would mention, but I'd just add my mom, Hana Kiholani Springer.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I forgot one.
Okay.
Because Kopula is on Kamehameha School's land.
Oh yeah.
And Namaka Whitehead, she supported us. She stood behind us in a very diplomatic way, and still does. Mililani Browning, all of these awesome ladies that, in their very articulate, professional way laid down the hammer to support us when things would go awry or we need extra funding. They make it happen. They get creative, and so major respect to the KS Wahine within their ever-changing names of departments.
I'm going to ask you to answer this one again. Yeah, I just want, you're here, so we're going to get it all. So every time I'm at like an outreach event or people kind of like look and they're like, oh, the dry forest. Like, what is that? Oh, I think I went there one summer. Do you know wilds? Like, I've had this conversation in the community hundreds of times, it feels like. So I want, everybody has, a lot of students come to all of our sites, but Ko'opulehu has been hosting really special field trips for a long time. So over all of your years at Ko'opulehu, you were part of those really impactful experiences for so many community members, specifically students. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how hosting students in place enriched the forest and, how you hope the forest had impacted your community.
Totally. When I first started at Ko'opulehu in early 2008, I was a young 23-year-old boy, and we get Kamehameha School summer enrichment programs that come through, and they're about 12 years old. It's a summer program. We'd get a group of like 30 children in the forest every week, and Kealaka'i can relate to this because they're like Kamahoe Hurley came in as a 12-year-old boy, and I remember like he's shying out because he's from Waimea. I'm originally from Waimea. I was raised in Waimea, and I remember moving Pohaku with him. I'd see him around Waimea town after that one day that we spent together in the forest. Then I see him in high school. Then I'm looking up to him, seeing him around town. Then he's on the crew at Puawa. Then he went to Parker Ranch. He went back to Puawa. But it's instances like that would keep us excited about, planting the seeds of love or knowledge and get local kids or not local kids, specifically the youth, excited about restoration, native plants, our natural and cultural resources, because those things here in Hawaii are really unique. There's only one Hawaii in the world, and so we got to protect those things. There's so many OPO that I've crossed paths with now that are way more successful than I am in however you measure success. But I see that, and like I'm getting old. I'm like super emotional. I'm always on like the verge of crying because I'm so proud. But I kind of forgot what the point was. Anyways, not to get super woo, but like this kind of work is it's bus ass work, but it's so rewarding. And when there was times where we had kids working so hard and they're like, "Uncle, I would take a bullet for you." It's like, why would you do that? Like, I appreciate the protector, the kia'i ship like that. But when you see those things come full circle, like, oh, it keeps you energized. And I think at the end of the day or at the end of a hard week or project, it's like there's a bigger picture that we're all working towards. And to pay respects to my mom, she always would tell me, you got to step out of the picture to see the picture. And when I was able to do that and learn about plants and to move home, I see the picture in that much more of a radiant light. And it's the kids and my colleagues and the native plants that make that light shine ever so bright, like the sunset behind us, this beautiful spring evening in Waikoloa. So yeah, I like Brother Nature. Brother Nature soaks out everybody all the time.
Totally.
It's so awesome.
There's such a good story. Brother Nature, Rob didn't tell me he was going to do this, but we have the third grade classes coming to the forest for field trips, and he dresses up in a tree costume, and he is now called Brother Nature. So every student at Waikoloa Elementary who was in third grade that year met Brother Nature, and it was memorable. And people still call him that around town. And we used to park our van for after school program over by the church in town, and it was a little girl, right? She pops out of the bushes. She sees him over there and she's like, Brother Nature. Like she was seeing a Sasquatch or a movie star or something. She was like so excited. But it does have a real impact on the kids, how you present this information to them. And I don't know if you want to talk about the community in the forest here at all, Rob, but if you had a follow up, that'd be great.
Yeah, getting to work with students, of all ages is one of the more fun things that we get to do, because you never know what little seed is going to be planted, just like with the plants that we plant. And I just had the nice opportunity on our last volunteer day, 2 Saturdays ago, to reconnect with a future forester that was in 4th grade at the time that I first started, and now he's in his first year of college at Palama Nui. And it was just so nice to, you see the community start to grow, and you hear the stories start to grow. And in terms of this project, it's easier to say what the community doesn't do out here. This whole organization has been built from the ground up, starting with the community. So as you look around, and not to get too sentimental, but everywhere I go, I see the community. I see Auntie Bev, I see Pat Castle, I see Bob Teese, I see Jim Waddington, and Albert Rich, rest in peace. So when you do this for so long, not only are you seeing things grow, but unfortunately, sometimes you see the tall trees fall. And that's always painful, but you do it for them, and you do it for everybody. Do it for the community. And I'm just the one lucky guy that gets to be paid to be out here. So when I have a long day, when I'm tired, want to go home, I think of the community and all of the people that aren't able to be out here anymore, and that's what helps to keep me going.
Part of the reason that you guys are sitting here instead of other people from your teams is that you guys have all been on the land for kind of a while now, more than a decade for all of you. Rob's the new guy, isn't that funny? So I was hoping you guys could talk about, what has changed, whether that's the forest or the community or, awareness, whatever it is that you'd like to talk about that has changed, and what are some of the successes that you've seen out there, and if there are big accomplishments that have had a big impact that maybe we don't get to see or the community isn't as aware of.
Go for it, Rob.
All right. Been doing conservation work for 10 years, and you do see a lot. And just in terms of this dry forest hui, taking a look at what has been done specifically for uhi trees. Unfortunately, when I first started, and this is only 7-8 years ago, there were over 100 uhi trees. And now they've just been slowly dwindling down, losing ones for, one reason or another. Drought, wind, knocking them over. And now there's only 50 left. So 95% of those are cared for by the people at this table. And when you see little signs of success moving forward, we've had these protected areas up for so long, and you're starting to see that natural regeneration happening. We were at 13 old adult uhi out here just a few years ago. That number dropped down to 8. And now through things that have grown up, we're now back at 11, and I see things only rising and rising from here. So things on the landscape are changing, things in the community are changing. More and more people recognize the value of what's going on out here. And then just here in Waikoloa, we're starting to see more and more families get involved and know the stories of these wili wili. For instance, I'll share the story of, many of you might already know, Clifford the wili wili down on Waikoloa Road, one of the large trees just right off the side of the road. And that tree was named Clifford by a future forester, and future foresters called that tree Clifford the wili wili. And before you know it, other students were calling it Clifford the wili wili, and a little while after that, families would call us and ask us about Clifford the wili wili because they were worried that it was not doing well. And so this story of Clifford the wili wili has spread throughout the town, and just one little indication, that this outreach and this work is spreading throughout the community and giving people a sense of place, that this area is something to be protected and cared for.
I feel like I blew it on my introduction. So at Napu, we work on a fairly large scale. So in total, we're managing 105,000 acres. Currently, we have fenced 5,200 something acres, and we have a bunch kind of proposed. In the time that I kind of first kind of getting on the land, there wasn't a whole lot of projects, and the projects didn't have very many staff. A lot of them were at that time kind of starting with like one or two. Over the years, I think community awareness about our resources has grown a lot, or at least in my observation. And then I think that kind of turned more into work kind of getting done on the ground. Previous to me, there was a lot of plans in motion. The groundwork had kind of been done on that front, and it was kind of just finding the money to do that. So when I first kind of came on with Napu, I was the first hire. My first task was to go through the work garage and see what we could use in there. We figured out we got one working truck, 3 working weed whackers, and I think 3 or 4 backpack sprayers. So that was kind of the start. And over the years, we got funding, and we were able to prove our concept that we can do this work. And also like our project can do this work. And this was even convincing the state that we can do this, and we got good at it. And since we built a lot of capacity, like I said, we have 10 employees now. We're trying to build a base yard currently, and for a number of years, working out of a 20 by 20 tarp, just kind of out in the field. So yeah, I've seen that change on the land. Certainly, as the units go up and we protect the forest and we do the planting, it works. Like you see the forest coming back. In areas that we're not able to protect as much, unfortunately, we're losing ground as well. If you're familiar with Honolulu, there's a lot of fires in that area. More recently, there was a fire in August 2022 where it burnt close to or a little over 16,000 acres. And now in that aupua, we have only about 2,000 acres of remaining forests. In total, it's about 60,000. So very, very fragmented. But again, on the other side where we're doing management on Puawa, we're seeing great successes. So it's kind of a balancing thing, or at least in my observation of gaining ground, we're losing ground here. But the work that we're doing is working. And just in 15 years, pasture that had remnant trees is now canopied, over 200 something acres. So it can be done. It's definitely changing, and fortunate to be on the land to see that observation and to be the hands to make that happen.
So I manage 70 acres, and
No shame.
hopefully next week with the dry forest hui, we'll get close to clearing all of that. When I started, maybe 30 acres were cleared, a little less. And then I want to go back to Rob and Uhi Uhi. When I started, we had 3 mature trees. A few keiki would pop up here and there, but wouldn't survive. And now we're down to 1 tree, but we have 6 keiki that have survived through the years, and 2 of them have flowered. 1 of them has seeded. So I think technically we're back to 2. I don't quite know how the numbers work. And then just we're a small parcel, so we get to intensively manage it. And with that intensive management, we're doing weed management and rodent management, and a lot of endangered species are naturally regenerating. Some years I don't know if everybody's familiar with kawila trees, but some years there's hundreds of kawila popping up, and it's pretty awesome to see. I don't know if Wilds wants to add anything about Kopalahu, but yeah.
I think the idea of success, like we've been in the game long enough to actualize and see what all of our different organizations define as success. The work is never Paul, but because I'm not currently involved directly in conservation anymore, when I drive by on the upper road and I drive past Pu'al, or I drive past Kaupleo, I bus couple honks, right? All forms of aloha. And I know if Like can hear me, he's like, I wonder who that was. And then I make my way towards Pu'awa. Like, I remember years ago when you guys were more of a skeleton crew, and like there's the ever looming threat of wildfire that, it's a huge impact to these sorts of ecosystems. But you had like 4 or 5 people, maybe not even, managing how many miles of fire break?
175.
175 miles of fire break. So Kekolike and I, we would backpack spray. You got to use the tools in your toolbox, right? We'd spray maybe once a week. Like Wednesdays were dedicated to spraying. We talked to Kealakai. They've been spraying for weeks. And like kudos to these guys, like saving the greater resource, like on a landscape level. So like that's a success in being able to effectively manage 170 miles of fire break. Like Koplu is relatively small in comparison, but it's been managed for a really long time. It's kind of like a magnified lens on a lot of different species compacted into a small area. And I've been able to see a lot of good stuff and share in the struggles with all you guys and the successes. But I guess with the work not being Paul, hopefully the successes won't be Paul either. Next question. Mahalo, Jen.
Let me ask a question. On the fires, what are you finding is the real principal cause of all the fires? Is it all, from people, or there's some natural thing happening?
It's like 90% people. And it's roadside ignition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you clean the roadsides, it helps, but
It can help, yes. There are some natural, at Pu'awa, we do have natural ignition, but those are rare. But if you're familiar with Pu'awa, the top road area, you can see our fuel breaks there. We're typically doing about 60 feet. And it has successfully not spread fire there. So what you kind of see there on the highway, it goes up into the forest. There it has a long history of ranching. So there are a lot of established roads, and we kind of work off of that. So we have basically our network of roads that serve as fuel breaks, and then where we have our forests, we put really big ones in. And then where we have our threatened endangered species, we have cleared areas around those trees to say that if a fire does come in a unit, we can at least save those rare species.
I have a question about fire too, like up here on the power line road. Ideally, how wide is an ideal width for protecting us here?
Wide as possible.
I think that's usually the answer.
What is it?
Ours
It's as wide as possible.
Yeah, like 100 feet would be ideal, or?
I think I remember from working up at Biocultural, we had a team of fire scientists out to check out some of the Western fire breaks and some of the larger fuel breaks that they manage up there. And they thought that 60 feet would be the minimum. And that's what our power line fire break is right now. But unfortunately, in that 2018 fire, when the fires are burning down and here in Waikoloa, the winds just are raging through. And on that particular fire, it was 55 mile an hour gusts. And although our fuel break stopped the majority of that fire front, embers burned across the road in a low-lying area, and unfortunately were able to ignite on the other side of the road and continued the fire past our fuel break.
So the Department of Transport just did a fuel break for the village, right? And it's like 30 feet or something. Do you know how wide that one is?
Yeah, they added 30 feet to the road, to the
30
existing
feet to the
30-foot
road.
road. So it's 60 feet.
60 feet.
Sorry, I knew that one.
On the theme of fire, are you guys dependent on municipality when an incident occurs and there are threats to endangered species, or are you guys out there with Nomex and red card certified Pulaskis and shovels and boots on the ground with your crew?
So, as far as my experience, where I'm at, recently we made a move to be in that position. So with that Leilani fire, in the area that it was burning, a lot of threatened endangered species. A lot of times the suppression teams don't know where all those things are, as you know, it's a big island or big West Hawaii. So they did bring us in, and we did help with advising of the fuel break being cut in. So since then, we actually didn't have the training, but we got accepted to get what they call being in the black. So we could be on the fire as long as we were in the black. But now, since then, we've got all the training, and we're ready to kind of roll on the next one, where hopefully that's going to be one of the first questions is where are in threatened and endangered stuff? What natural resources do we need to save?
Thank you.
Can you talk about how it works with the county on private land?
So, for instance, here in Waikoloa, it oftentimes, unfortunately, is just a matter of our fuel breaks protecting the natural resources that we have. We try to do as much outreach as we can. And of course, we're at the fire station every time there is a fire, telling far and wide how rare and treasured some of these natural resources are. And they are amenable to that. But as far as the county fire stations go, their primary objective is life and homes and property. And so if they have the available resources, then they'll protect the natural resources. But we've ran into some issues on that front. So when we think about fire for our area, it's really just fire breaks and what we can do to mitigate on the front end. We don't necessarily have the capacity to go out and fight the fire ourselves. So as much as we can do in terms of outreach and preventing it from happening in the first place.
So the sun has gone down. Hopefully you caught that. So I'm just going to advance through this a little bit, but I wanted you guys to touch on, what do we need? Like, how do we level up? What do you see as some of the biggest needs? If you could change things, what would it be? that could help us better conserve our natural ecosystems, save endangered species, connect people. What do we need?
For our team, at least what we kind of see as being the next like level up, and it's not even what I think we or where we need to be to do things that, in my mind, I would like to get to doing things by thousands of acres. But right now we're trying to develop a tool that we could potentially do 100 or a few hundred acres at a time. And it would be to capitalize after a burn. So in that Leilani fire, we lost half of a proposed unit. We had just received the funding for it. We were about to break ground on the fence construction, and the fire burnt half of it. So we shift gears. We had to do an assessment, do the report, figure out kind of what's lost, what's left. Got through that. And then we had to convince the state and our funders that it was still worth saving. We were able to do that. And then we started having the ideas working off of experience that Waikoloa had here, being clipped by that fire, to do post-fire restoration by treating and getting rid of the fountain grass when it first kind of comes back. So in the fire, it burns most of the viable seed. What you're kind of seeing coming up is mostly coming from the tufts and also some seed coming up. So it's like this really unique opportunity to like kind of start over. So you spray that. And then you come in and you scatter seed. So working off of what they had done, to get it to what I think hundreds of acres is by doing it with a helicopter. So it's not a new tool to spray with a helicopter. It is kind of a new tool to spread seed with a helicopter. So that was a lot of figuring out. Well, basically in this proposed unit, we're doing an experiment where we're looking at different treatment methods, and one of those being is applying dry mulch that then expands when there's a lot of rain. They use it in the western states a lot after fires, mostly for erosion control, but it also kind of dubs as holding moisture retention in the ground, which you can kind of put two and two together that would work well for seeds. So basically we divided in a total of 18 acres up into 4 different plots. We have the control. In one treatment, we did 6,000 pounds of dry mulch. In a third, we did no mulch. And then the fourth, we did 3,000 pounds. And then across the 3, not the control, we spread 173 pounds of seed, which for native seeds is a lot. That was a huge effort.
What kind of seed are you spreading?
So their appropriate species was A'ali'i, Aveoveo, Puakala, and we did Mamane.
And what's the mulch your consist of, or your source? Is it from Pohana?
So it came from the mainland. We contracted with a person that specializes in hydromulch, and the dry mulch was kind of a new thing to him, but he basically kind of handled all that. It's a sterile product, so I'm not super familiar with like what it's made up of exactly, but it's basically like in a pellet, and it's just kind of goes down like that. There's a special bucket that drops it from the helicopter, an external load. And then as the rain comes, it expands and it kind of forms this barrier on the ground. Yeah. So
how long ago did you guys try that?
We just finished a couple months ago.
Okay.
So we're going to be monitoring now every quarter. and kind of see what the results of that is. We already know putting seed on the ground works. So from the work that Waikoloa has done here. So now we're kind of seeing like, okay, does this mulch do anything or add anything to that? And then coming off of that, we'll kind of know our results, and then we'll be more prepared, I think, during the next fire event, which it's kind of a matter of time. So one other thing that we're also trying to work on is aligning our funding sources to be more flexible during fire events, because the land management need just totally changes, obviously, and now we need to do post-fire things. So that's another thing that we're trying to work on, but is kind of somewhat challenging. So we'll see what the results are, and I'm pretty hopeful for it. And I think it could be a tool in the future where if we can start doing prescribed burns to clear areas that we want to do restoration in, that would be great. Also, potentially aligning funding for fencing areas that have recently burned. That was one challenge of this project, is we hadn't yet fenced it. So we had to do that in addition to the job. But if we have funding kind of all ready to go, it would just make things happen in the time that it needs to. Because with post-fire restoration, it needs to happen at certain times. Obviously, here in West Hawaii, the rain is going to kind of dictate the weed growth, so if you get a lot of rain, like we might need to be out there in a month spraying, and like we don't even have money for it, and still we're doing it. So a lot of things to kind of work through, but I think a really good potential to scale up.
What was the question again?
Something different. I just wanted to know like what you guys think we need to like be more successful in conservation. If there are things that you could change that would advance all of our collective goals as a hui, in addition to adding new tools and getting creative.
Yeah.
This could be your magic wand question.
More money, and more equipment. Like talking about fire, like I want to get a D8 and just have it parked in Kaupulehu, because a fire is going to come, and the ability to fight it in 20 minutes instead of 3-4 hours whenever they do call in the bulldozers is important in my mind. And then I'd say relaxing on the permits. Just Uncle Bill asked about Ojai, and I don't know if you guys have your guys, what's the permit?
Endangered species?
Yeah, but the horticultural, or I don't know if you guys have your permit, but yeah, so Uncle Bill wants Ojai. Rob, here's an Ojai. I would like that to happen someday.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think like more technologies, like having like furthering the applied research support for getting fancy technologies available and bridging the gaps with like engineers and resource managers and like figuring things out in remote areas. Young, creative bureaucrats to help you get permitting things, push through exceptions, this and that. But I think continuing what's currently going on, but then getting more creative with the technologies that are available, and maybe exploring different subsets of disciplines that wouldn't normally cross paths, to get creative and actually make things like machines, not AI, not robots, but maybe, I don't know.
Is there a role for drones?
There's been quite a lot of new activities with drones, and even shooting seeds down from the drones at very targeted intervals. But even going beyond that, the different types of photography or this LiDAR technology that can really identify individual plant species just based on the light that they emit or the radiation. So you can just cover a drone area and then find those individual endangered species if you know their special signature. So there's been a lot of work with those drones coming along the lines.
Awesome. Okay. I think this will just be our last question, and then if there are any additional ones, but maybe in just a sentence or something, if you could tell us, like, what's your vision for your place that you've worked in, or dry forest or conservation Hawaii? Like, what's your conservation vision? And 10 years from now, do you think we'll be closer to that vision?
For here, I guess my vision is what you see around us. These outplanting sites that have been successful for the last 10 years will just be a small kipuka that's just expanding into the greater area. One thing that I didn't mention about things that have been changing over the last 10 years is that this area of Waikoloa, the 275 acres, has been fenced for about 12 years now. So looking into the future, as these willy trees continue to grow, not only are our planted individuals making seedlings underneath them, but we have many of the wild trees making natural seedlings underneath them as well, which you just don't see outside of protected areas like this. So we just recently went through with the Dry Forest Hui to assess the health of the willy population in the greater area of Waikoloa. And there are over 80 natural seedlings coming up underneath these wild trees, some of them that have been dead for over a decade. And there are only 60 wild trees in the preserve here. So to have an additional 80 that are coming online, that's going to ramp up really quickly and start to change the space into that closed canopied forest that you would have thought about thinking about dry forest in the past.
Yep. Sorry to have so many questions, but got a chance to ask. You guys ever, you're having experience out there and it's really meaningful to you, and you might feel that, that's unique to me because of my interest in botany or zoology or geology or whatever field you happen to be coming out of. So I think we have a tendency, if we're in that particular mindset, to think, shucks, I wonder if there are very many more other people like me that can really appreciate being out here and surrounded by these ancient growths, things that have been here for far longer than humanity has. And I think that Hawaii is going to be definitely more and more recognized as sort of a unique area. We talk a lot about this when we got the Kohala Center going years and years ago, that people are going to want to come here to see what was and to appreciate a different atmosphere, if you will, microclimates, whatever they happen to be. And I would think that if you look at the land that you're working with, it's all what they would call pilau land, right? You can't produce a product. What's a product, So you have ungulates, and that's a product that ruins everything else. What's left, It seems to me that the only industry that could produce something on that land, which would fund your efforts in perpetuity, would be tourism. Do you ever think about how could we route people through safely without hurting anything and, generate their interest and then have them, seeding the idea with their friends. When we were there, we saw the most amazing things. And, because I think people can relate. It's just that they don't have the opportunity to, I don't know if you guys talk about that. I hear what your thoughts were.
I think absolutely, thinking back to the early days of this project, there was nothing but grass and a handful of willy trees. And anyone that came out, Jen and Bev, hiked them through the fields, through the grass, and people were just there's an instant connection with the trees that have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so, not only it's a very human thing, when you connect to these places, and tourism is one thing. And I think that it's important for some of these rare and endangered species to be on the front line, because if nobody sees them, how is anyone supposed to care about them? But beyond that, the trees themselves, they have a connection to the people of this place, the stories of this place. If you lose the trees, then you lose the stories. But making connections on all fronts, I think, is going to be the key to saving these dry forest species.
What's your vision? And are we getting closer? One sentence.
For the place that I'm in, vision, just basically kind of finishing the plan and getting all those units built just to stabilize the populations of the endangered species. And that's when the real work kind of starts for us there. And I think we're going to get there. Like, we're on a pretty good track right now.
In 10 years, the 70 acres will be not completely restored, but will be fully cleared of weeds and planted as well as we can, and we'll be expanding another 100 acres in the surrounding area.
So could you take a small place like yours and use it as a visitor site that would then fund the work that was going on in the larger areas where it was much more difficult to use as visitor site? In other words, could they go there, be inspired in a climate that is much more easy to control because it's smaller, and then that can serve as your funding window, so to speak, for the areas where people are not obviously going to go visit, but that are essential for the preservation of the species, which takes a much larger area than just a petri dish,
In an ideal world, yes, absolutely.
You guys are the idealists, right?
We've had a few tourist groups come out, and they want to be more catered to. I feel that it's not.
There's that.
Yeah, it's so we don't really.
That's a challenge, right?
Yeah. So if we could get over that, and that's more of a for our outreach team and how they.
Maybe you can wear a special outfit or something.
I can speak to what you're getting at. Quite a bit,
I don't like to talk. So.
But I wonder. I would really like to hear from Wilds, but we have thousands of visitors to Waikoloa Dry Forest every year, and part of our model has been like, this is close to it's accessible. It's not this really. It's not such a sacred place to people from this place that we don't feel that we can bring people here. It's an easy window to meet these plants and to see them, and to let students, particularly our local people first, learn about these things and connect to these places, because they're going to be the ones making decisions and policies and funding decisions and trying to recreate that connection and that ethos in our own communities first, before we just try to monetize it to tourists. But that being said, we try to balance that a lot. And there are lots of groups that come here and they don't give a shit about what's up here. They've never seen it. They don't know. They just want to drink and pool and go out on the boat or whatever it is. But when those people do come and they learn from Rob about the wili wili trees, and they hear what he's talking about and how rare these things are and how connected the people of this place are to these trees, they do have that connection. They make that connection. And there are ways to monetize that, but that can't be our first goal, our only goal, to cater to tourists. We have so much work to do and so much work to do in our own communities that we have to balance that. So I think that's something that I personally think about a lot.
Can you tell us your vision for dryland forest?
Yeah, or at least, I'm going to speak to Ko'opalehu because that place is still very near and dear to my heart. But my vision in 10 years is that we're all still here. We get to do this again, still walking upright. But that Kopula will be a fully functioning, more than it already is, ecosystem that integrates more food production and continues to involve all the aspects of the work we do, the social, the environmental, the spiritual. And I can't wait to eat the dry forest mangoes and the inamona coming from the kukui. But yeah, mahalo nui.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing with us and the 10, 20, 30, 40, the collective 65 years or so that you guys have spent on Aina making it better. And I just love y'all. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here.